session. We'll start with reports. The 6.1, the Nelson Tasman Regional Landfill Business Unit General Manager's Update Report, August 2025, page 7, councillors. Nathan, when you're ready.
Yeah, thank you. Through the chair, it's the end of this is the last quarter, or the report for the last quarter. Everything ran smoothly from a safety and a performance perspective. Compaction was on target. It was because it was the last quarter. It sort of also correlates with the annual report. We had in total 67,000 tonnes of normal waste when we exclude the Back Beach Sawdust project, which was 10,700 tonnes. And 67,000 tonnes is about 6,000 tonnes less than budget. So what does that mean? It's a little bit concerning given our forecast for this year is the crux of the important piece there. Our waste volumes are down, which would suggest that we might run at a deficit for this year. In terms of the actual financial performance for the 24-25 year, we came in, I think, $6,000 above budget out of $20.1 million budget. I thought that was pretty close to the line. What we did is we managed to run a deficit of I think $244,000 negative, which was $6,000 above our budgeted deficit of $250,000. So we went into the year with two pieces. One was a budgeted deficit of $100,000, and we then agreed to an extraordinary or a cost of $150,000 for the operations contract.
Mr. Chair, could I just? There's a question there that I have. Yeah. Just in that first sentence or so, where you mentioned about the tonnage being 67,000, and that was 6,000 approximately below what was budgeted. And I picked up on your comment that it was a little bit concerning. Are we going to have a plan B? Are you exercising your mind on that? Because if our waste is dropping and, we've got to assess, well, where does our future lie?
So the consequence will be if we do run a lower than budgeted waste in the 25-26 year, we will run a bigger deficit. We will not recover the full amount of money to cover all the costs. And then what that will mean is that in future years, we'll have to increase the gate fee to recover that deficit in future years. So we do need to be cognizant that any deficit that we run would result in an increase in gate price in future years. In the agenda, there is the business plan for 26-27, the draft business plan for consideration. That price does go up considerably in that on the back of a local disposal levy increase and the government MFE levy, and the fact that I have adjusted the projected landfill mass from 74,000 tonnes down to 70,000 tonnes. So that also raises the price per tonne. Yeah. I have done that for the 26-27 year, but I can't do anything about the current year, 25-26. That's already set. Yeah. So I've done that for the 26-27 year. Yes.
It's just that wording a little bit of a concern, and I think that
it is. That's
for us around the table. We need to say to you, are you planning to manage that?
Well, as best I can. I mean, we'll tighten the belt as far as we can, wherever we can. We will. Also, one of the things that might compensate is that we're on the agenda. There's the Eves Valley Class 3 report. So there is a possibility of additional revenue from Class 3 waste disposal. So if we can drop the fee there, then I expect that there will be more waste come in from that, and that might also create some more revenue. So,
Mr. Kirby, Richard.
Nathan's given a great example in terms of the business unit perspective, but from the wider council perspective, we do have an objective in our waste plan to reduce the amount of waste going to landfill. Yeah. And so that's actually, we're aligning it. But the challenge now becomes do we continue to fund the waste streams and the recycling and the waste minimisation from revenue from the landfill, or do the councils have to look at other sources of funding? So that's a discussion the two councils will have to have at a wider level as opposed to the business unit.
Thank you.
Okay. Health and safety wise, the landfill ran well. Environmental performance, there were no significant issues, despite some pretty significant rainfalls that occurred during that period of time. And, overall, I'm relatively comfortable with where we are. We did have 4 notifications for odour during that period. They were all fleeting or short duration. And by the time we got to the sites, we were unable to detect them. So that was not indicative of a consent breach, but certainly not ideal. We've done a lot. We carried on doing, capital works activities. So the class 3 facility is up and running. We've done a review of at Eves Valley, we've done a review of the capacity there, and that's identified that we can develop around 300,000 cubic metres of airspace on the top of the old stage 2 landfill, this between stage 2 and stage 1, and on the old stage 1 landfill. And that there gives us time to get a new facility developed elsewhere at the Eves Valley site for additional future capacity. So that gives us allowance to open the gates a bit to let more waste in.
Chair, I think this is very significant, hugely significant, this breakthrough that you've had with regard to increasing capacity, 290,000
Yep. 295,000 cubic metres. Yeah.
Cubic metres.
Yeah.
That's extremely pleasing. It really is.
Yeah.
And when you go through your report, Nathan, you notice that you're waiting for a resource consent on this or an extension on that, and so the list goes on. And it sounds to me as though in this case you're wanting to forge ahead and progress at pace. You said you can quickly develop that extra land, but it's a case of the progress being bogged down by the process. And it's going to cost this unit, I think, if they don't hurry up and give you your consents for land use. You've got about 3 in the pot at the moment, and you might have to wait months for it. I can speak from experience that we're wanting to close a road. You're wanting to close a road, aren't you?
The process is being...
And it's in the pipeline?
Yep.
Well, ours has taken 18 months. And NCC's has taken 18 months, and we're not there yet. So you've got about 3 of these in the pot, haven't you?
Yeah, there's quite a lot of different resource consents or procedural aspects around administrative. But I mean, it's part of the process. It's part of the way we have to do it. So we have to be looking forward and far enough to be able to put these steps in place, right, so that we can get them there. And we have to have a contingency plan. So that's part of the reason for redeveloping, redoing the airspace assessments, because basically what that says is we have consented capacity for about 120,000 cubic metres on stage 2, which we can use, but we don't want to use that whole 120,000 because that is our reserve class 1 airspace for emergencies within our region. So we only want to use up to about half of that. But that's still 60,000 cubic metres, which is about 100,000 tonnes of waste, of that class 3 waste, which is a significant volume. So that's more than it's a few years now rather than what we thought might have been 1 year of capacity. So dropping the fee and allowing that waste to come in more rapidly is something I think I'm comfortable now that we can do.
Can do that.
We can do that. We still need to go and get the consent to continue the additional capacities.
Yes.
So for future years, but I think we can do that now.
Well, that's good news.
Yep.
Thank you.
In terms of emission management, everything's been running well. Gas capture's still going very well. I think we got their highest week ever a few weeks ago in terms of 150,000 or 149,000 cubic metres in the week. Basically, it puts us in a good position for the emissions trading stuff. The emissions trading scheme has come out for consultation. They're changing the default emission factor, so that will affect our emissions at the end of the year, but hopefully not markedly. But it's going from 0.91 default emission factor to 1.023, so increasing the default emission factor from where it has been sitting. We haven't actually done a lot of additional works in our waste minimisation activities, but we have been diverting metal. So I think put out 13.5 tonnes of steel from the landfill recycled during the period. And in terms of risks, well, you always write this risk aspect in the here. Odour complaints is one of the things that I think we need to be taking cognizant of. I mean, it's not that it's a problem yet. We're only having a handful a year still. But as we get taller and fill up the landfill further and further, we get more exposed to the weather and more exposed to slow winds. So the issues and the management of that will become more of an issue potentially in the future. So we just have to be really cognizant of the way we manage the landfill and how we cap. We're doing a very good job at the moment, and so we just need to keep on that, and keep a watch on it. There may be a need at some stage in the future to put in some fans or something along the western boundary to try and create a dispersion aspect for that in those really cold mornings, which is when it generally affects us. We've joined the Gas New Zealand, and we're a member of the Gas New Zealand industry group now. So turns out that when we sell the boiler, we will be a gas distributor because we'll be selling gas. And we'll be one of 3 gas distributors in New Zealand, and we will have a gas distribution network 2.2 kilometres long and 1 customer. We'll also be a gas retailer with 1 customer. So the rules are interesting, but that's what the Gas Act requires.
You're smiling very broadly. Is this exciting you? You don't normally show emotion, but you're talking to me there.
No, it's a little bit amusing.
Yeah.
To be on the Gas New
Quite
Zealand,
unique.
introduced to the Gas New Zealand board recently and talking about gas issues within New Zealand, and talking with Claris, who have 200,000 customers, and we're there talking about how 1 customer. Anyway, that's what the rules require. So we've done that.
It's probably some old regulations and
Yeah, well, it's set up primarily for large gas distribution networks, and fortunately or unfortunately, the gas systems are running out. So the gas industry is very keen on getting people with bioenergy or biogas associated with onto that system, but there is no scalability in their systems.
right.
It's essentially set up to be equal for Claris or for ourselves in a lot of ways. So yeah, anyway,
Very good.
We'll deal with it.
Carry on.
Yep. I talked about finances briefly. If there's any questions, I'm more than happy to talk to them. But overall, the last quarter was pretty good, and we came to a good conclusion to the year. And we'll talk about that more in the discussion of the annual report. So
Correct. So any questions on the manager's update? Councillor Courtney.
I just want to give some feedback, and it's good feedback, and we thrive on good news. Nathan, you must be going out in the community and talking to the people, and you're inviting them into the landfill to see the operation there. And my word, that's been well received. When I travel around the community, invariably, some will take me aside and tell me how interesting it was, and a particular line you may have said, or one of the staff, one of your team may have said to them, and they are fascinated with it. Very, very interested. So I'd just like to commend you and your team for holding these open homes, or what on earth you'd call them, I don't know.
open days, I think we call them. Yeah, we don't live there, not yet anyway. But
right. Well, also there's a feedback that you go out into the community and you talk to community groups and this sort of thing, and I think this is very, very good.
Yeah, I got stood up recently by a councillor who didn't turn up to a conversation. I went to a Rotary Club and one of the councillors was there. The other one couldn't turn up for some reason.
Pressure of work.
Pressure of work, was it?
Others calling.
No, thank you, Mel.
Yeah, just to follow on from Councillor Courtney, I've heard the same thing about the open days. So yeah, they're really well attended, I guess, and really interesting for those that attend. Yeah. So really beneficial. It's getting the message out there.
Yeah, we've had over 200 people through the landfill in recent times, and almost invariably the feedback is positive. I mean, we've had in the very early stages there was a few people who are less enthused because they were our direct neighbours. And the one biggest thing that we suffered from was seagulls, was the feedback. It's a little bit of discussion about traffic at the Bishopdale to Waimea Road corner, which is not inside our control. But again, as I say, there's invariably there's a lot of positive feedback. People come there expecting, a dump, something that's got litter and rubbish everywhere, and then I show them where you are disposing of waste, and it's over in that little area just over there at this particular time, and they're quite surprised by that. So it's quite good from our perspective to get that positive affirmation.
And just one further question from myself, Nathan. In the report, there's quite a few battery fires alluded to. Is that just because it's indicated all of them to us? It does seem quite a number, or is that a growing trend, or
No,
it's because it's all exclusive list? Because I would have thought the battery bins and the battery booths would be taking some of the risk out.
And this, through the chair, this quarter there were 6 ignition events recorded. So in the annual report there were 22.
Right.
So I think you might be thinking.
Yes, I might have been actually.
The annual report, which is 22. So yeah, we had 6 in this quarter. I mean, which is substantively down on where we were, 3 or 4 years ago. But it is still 6, and we obviously want to keep on pushing that down. Yeah. The Nelson City Council and Tasman District Council have their bins available now. Obviously, that's in their purview now to put them into the community. That's not something we're in.
No, true. Would someone, Councillor Walker?
Happy to move his report if that's what you're looking for. Just one quick question. When you say in your report that we have to implement changes to its safety systems now that we're part of this Gas NZ, and obviously our administration needs to change a little bit, there's improvements needing to comply with the Gas Act 1992. Are we abreast of that? Are there any little hooks that we may be caught up in with having to comply with an act, and
there's
financially are we within
the safety system associated with the gas thing there's a sort of a more mandated arrangement which we currently don't have. We're in the process of trying to do that. So as we sell the boiler, we will have to implement that new system. It's one of the reasons that being part of the gas industry body will be good is that we can call on others to support us with the development of that as well, because we're using some of their systems as a model for helping to build ours. So we're in the process of trying to implement that, and that will also come to the administrative burden that comes with complying with gas regulations. So there will be some additional cost to us. That being said, we're getting additional revenue. So what comes around on one side it will cost us. It's just an expected element of the process.
Anything further? Someone like to second the resolution? Councillor Courtney. And so that's the resolution relating to the General Manager's update. Moved Councillor Walker, seconded Councillor Courtney. All those in favour will say aye.
Aye.
Against? Resolution is carried. Now we'll move on to the annual report on page 21. Nathan, in your name.
Yes, through the chair, elements of crossover with the previous General Manager's report. A successful year. We've had the operations and maintenance contractor on board for a year now. They've done a very, very good job. So, very impressed with that. We've had the new temporary transfer system in place. And again, that's resulted in some excellent outcomes in terms of turnaround times, in terms of environmental standards, etc. So we're very happy with that. And customer feedback has been very positive throughout the year. I think primarily on the helpfulness of our staff on site, but also the fact that those contractors are able to get into site, discharge their loads and get out and do so in a much more rapid time frame than they have historically. They don't have to clean their trucks as much because there's not as much mud, there's not as many flat tires, etc. So I think that's the principal benefit. For me, one of the good things that I feel they've done this year is that the Market Road pathway has been completed. I actually didn't write it in here. So we put that footpath down beside Market Road. And for me, that's, it's a weight off my shoulders. All the people walking their dogs up and down the road where there's no footpath and you've just got big heavy trucks running up there. Having the walkway there that we've installed is, for me, quite a good outcome. So, what else is there's Stuart, Councillor, you talked about the ignition events. I think that's it's certainly not where we want to be. We'd like to have none, but we're certainly working towards we're getting that down. So I think we can be comfortable. We've put those bins together. We've actually presented at the National Waste Conference on those bins and on fire management, and that was very well received. So I did a presentation at the Waste Bins Conference. Actually quite a significant audience there for that presentation. And we were on the specialist committee at the time for talking about battery fires and lithium-ion battery issues. There are others around the country are doing a lot of additional work. So looking at the fires principally in the waste trucks and the likes, but we're been focusing on trying to reduce the number we get to the landfill. There's a big table in here of the things that we essentially our long-term objectives and our key performance measures, and I went through and I actually didn't have any red stuff in there, and I was surprised about that because normally we'll have some red marks in there, something we didn't achieve. But it looks like when I reviewed it all, we achieved everything. So again, a pretty good outcome from my perspective there. I'm more than happy to take any questions. And then from a budgetary perspective, the above the line number, we had this $244,000 deficit compared to a budgeted deficit of $250,000. But below the line, and once you included revaluations and property expenses and the likes, we actually had a net surplus of 1.7 million. So Andrew will have to talk to you about the meaning of the value of those, because we can't really trade. Those are non-monetary or non-cash changes. So maybe he wants to explain the difference and why we've got such a nice outcome when we actually lost cash for the year.
Do you want to cover that off, Andrew? Please.
Thanks for throwing me under the bus. We have to comply with international accounting standards, and we revalue our property, plant and equipment, and so any revaluation of those has to be recorded as a gain. So that's where they sit, and they sit below the line. So the net surplus is, as Nathan pointed out, the more real number, if you like. It's probably not a good word, but the more relevant number than the total comprehensive revenue and expenses. But it is what it is.
Yep, is that sufficient explanation
for that, or
happy with that? Thank you.
Okay. So overall, I'm comfortable with the financial performance. So we're very close to budget where we were, so we need to be happy about that. It was on the back of some unusual activities. So we had less general waste come in, but we had more. We had the back beach sawdust, which compensated for that, and then we had a bunch of other operational costs for repairing slips, there was a bunch of change, but at the end of the day we came in very close to budget, so it was very good. So any other questions?
Yep. Councillor Walker, then Councillor Stallard.
Sorry, I meant to ask this before we moved into the financial part. In those beautiful graphs where you said it's all green,
yeah,
I commend you on getting all that done as a team. there's one line in there which talks about the draft strategic plan. So I'm just wondering, when we're talking about future proofing and what things look like moving forward from the end of this term, where does that draft strategic plan sit? And how will that be utilised moving forward if we're going to be good stewards of the assets that this business unit has? Surely there must be a plan somewhere that has to be implemented.
So through the chair, we've obviously got the activity management plan, the 10-year plan. I've had a conversation with each of the joint committee members about the future direction that they see that the landfill business unit might, and we've tried to aggregate that into a draft of some plan. That hasn't been finalised at this stage because in doing so, we've also asked questions of ourselves, and I've gone back to the two senior council officers to say, should we look broader than just the business unit? And at the moment, we haven't got clarity around that. So at the present time, there is no clarity around what a strategic plan. Generally, when we do a strategic plan, we look at the business unit itself. This is what we think the future will hold, and here are alternatives to that. And at the moment, we haven't gone into the idea of those alternatives at the stage. So we're just basically in the process of developing that still, Councillor Walker.
Councillor Stalin, sorry, I was having a moment. Senior moment.
Thanks, Chair Brian. A few questions. So good news that the gas quality issues at Eves have been resolved. I wonder if you could just summarise what the understanding is of what the issues were and how they came to be resolved.
So through the chair, in the summer of 23-24, we were flaring gas, and then we were monitoring the gas concentration of methane and CO2, and we were finding that the balanced gas, the amount of air that was getting into the system, was increasing while we were running. So we needed to ensure that when we start up an engine on this material, we don't have a lot of balanced gas because the engine won't necessarily run properly. So we actually went back and looked at the capping on the system, and then we also looked at the way we were operating our blowers for the flare unit. And we adjusted the way we ran that system to suck slightly less gas through the system, because previously it was just on a fixed speed, or isn't that we then put in a variable speed in it, and we looked at and changed the way we manage and check our capping. I think that it was exacerbated during that summer period by the drought that we had at the time, or the very dry conditions, and therefore the capping on the landfill probably cracked and got fissures in it. And as it got moist again, it's sealed those fissures up. So one of the things that we'll look at in the future is where we've also installed a gas meter that has methane and CO2 analysis in it. So the flow meter actually has that in it, so we can see what's going on. And if we need to, we'll irrigate the cap to ensure it stays wet to stop that balanced gas getting sucked in. So there is an engine due to arrive in September, a small 100 kilowatt engine that will be installed and will run on the gas to create electricity and send that out to the grid. The consequence of those issues were that we rejigged the size of the engine. We brought it down from a 200 kilowatt to a 100 kilowatt engine, so that we wouldn't have to suck as much gas and therefore be exposed to those same issues.
Great, understood, thank you. And that engine, what proportion of the energy goes sort of waste heat as opposed to electricity, and is there scope to use the heat if there is waste heat?
So through the process, we actually looked at other options from engines. So we looked at whether or not, at the time we were trying to see whether we could get an asphalt plant out there or something like that to use the gas to provide heat for keeping bitumen warm or the likes, and we weren't able to make any of those options feasible. In terms of the engines themselves, this particular engine we bought is a Chinese engine, not a German or expensive engine. We've chosen to go with a cheaper engine. We got a range of prices from about $1 million down to about $140,000. The $140,000 one is the one we selected. Yeah, so significantly different. And the efficiency of the most expensive ones were about 40% electrical efficiencies, and this one's about 36% electrical efficiency. So it's not as efficient. So essentially, what that means is about not 64% of the energy goes out as waste heat, rather than as coming out as electricity. But when doing that analysis, it just didn't make sense to spend a whole heap more money on an engine for a very small difference in electrical efficiency. So we chose to go with a cheaper one. And given that it's a landfill that is on its decline rather than growing, we should also be cognizant that we didn't want to invest a lot of money in it.
Thank you. And just a few more questions, if I might. The leachate to stormwater event, I wonder if you could just provide some details around the volume, and also we have quite a sort of strict definition of leachate, don't we, of any water that comes into contact with the landfill. So it doesn't necessarily mean it's highly contaminated, although it could be. So I wonder if you could just comment on that.
Yeah, through the chair, the resource consent we have allows as a last resort for pumping leachate into the stormwater pond, and then and essentially it overflows with stormwater into the creek, dilutes it before it goes to the ephemeral stream and then into Eves Valley stream. And in the extreme weather events, there was a significant amount of leachate generated through the system. It was essentially water coming either in through the cap or under the or from other areas under the ground into the system. We're not sure that it came in contact with waste. It could have been just saturating the subgrade sufficiently that it was coming into the bottom of the landfill and flowing in. But it certainly filled up the stormwater, the leachate system, and was coming in faster than our capacity to discharge that to the sewer system. Normally, we would try to get sucker trucks in and suck it out and then bring it to the sewer and discharge it. But Waimea West Road and the Waiiti Bridge were both out of service and were closed, so we were unable to get sucker trucks to the facility. We were able to get from Eves Valley Road into the facility, where previously we haven't been able to do that because we had a Ford. We've now got the box culvert we put in a few years ago. So, but we simply couldn't get to Eves Valley. So we managed to get someone at the landfill. One of our staff members lives in Teapot Valley and could get there, and so we set up the pumps to pump over so we didn't overflow the stormwater, the leachate pond. And was it concentrated? No, it was principally stormwater intrusion at the time, but not ideal. We would rather not discharge leachate other than to the sewer. So.
What kind of rainfall event would result in this thing, like 1 in 10 year, 1 in 50 year?
I honestly can't answer you. This was a 1 in, I believe, 100-year event. The Tasman Council's staff would probably have a clearer idea of that.
Richard?
I'm not sure about Eves Valley, but certainly Motueka Valley had a 100-year event. I think the side of the hill was more like a 20-year event.
Okay.
Yeah.
So maybe, certainly this event resulted in us having it, but if that's the case, it might not. What wasn't 1 in 100? It's quite frequent that Waimea West Road goes underwater. It's very infrequent that the Waiiti Bridge is out of service.
True.
And it's very infrequent. In my time in the last 5 years, this is the only time we've had an issue. But prior to that, we are in the process of slowly upgrading the leachate system. So we have when we've done a replacement or rebuild of the road, we've also rebuilt the leachate pipework and put PN10 or PN16 pipes in, depending on where we are in the network, rather than the PN6, so we can get higher pressures and therefore more flow. But we haven't done that to the entire leachate system, which is 6.5 kilometres long. So over time, we will most likely need to do some further upgrading of the pressure of the network. At the present time, under normal circumstances, we can cope.
And then moving on to the delay with the governance document reviews. I know we've talked about that this term, but they were adopted by NCC 3 years ago and have yet to make their way to TDC. and we've covered reasons for that. I wonder if there is anything, in summary, given that we're nearly at the end of the term, what the next steps will be for the next council, where we sit with that, and what will be brought to some governance body, whether it's this one or a different one, in terms to decide the way forward.
Through the chair, I'd have to put that back to the officers of the two councils too.
So through the chair, we will wait for the next makeup of the new council and see how that is developed, and then we will be taking this matter that you referred to. It'll follow the due process through whatever mechanism the new council decides.
Richard,
It is certainly on the agenda, and both Richard and I are aware of the need to move this forward.
anything further, Richard? No. It's still an issue with our legal team though, isn't it, Richard?
Yes.
Yeah. Anything further, Councillor Stallard? Did somebody else have their hand up to speak? Councillor Courtney, sorry.
Just a couple of questions directed to you or through to Andrew. I don't mind. I'm just looking, and it's not big in the scheme of things, but still it's a doubling, and that's the insurance cost. Is it insurance? Yeah, no, not insurance. Let's have a look here. Yes, insurance over the budget for 2024-25 of 10,000, and then an actual of 20,000. So there's a doubling there. Was there some activity that caused us to have to increase our insurance?
So through the chair, the Nelson City Council reviewed the insurance processes that they go through and the way that they insure their assets. They have two separate insurance arrangements, one for assets that are underground and essentially ones that for buildings that are above ground. And those, like most homeowners, I think the council have also been facing with much bigger insurance bills. So the insurance costs were higher than the budgeted amount to insure our assets. It does also influence the fact that our assets have increased in value to some extent, that it will increase that. But primarily, I think it comes down to the sheer cost of the premium of us insuring and our portion of the assets that the Nelson City Council has been insuring.
Yeah. Anything further?
Yes, I just see here, and I probably can answer my own question, but the total revenue was 263 over budget, and yet total expenses were 838 over the business plan budget. Now, I thought we benefited considerably from the sawdust extraction from Te Nui Beach, and that bolstered our revenue. Can you just explain 9.2 and 9.3 to me, really, the discrepancy there? One's above budget and then we lose it all again.
That is essentially exactly right. We made more money by selling general waste services and the Tahuna Beach sawdust. So we made 693 more than budget. But we had additional expenses associated with setting up the sawdust reception and with repairing the slips behind the landfill, which are operational budgets, and the temporary transfer facility. Those are all operational costs. And so the overarching costs to us were 838 more than budget. So they compensated each other, and obviously we lost slightly more than we gained. But in total, we were 6,000 above budget because there were other things that came in our favour. In terms of the budget, so we spent in here 296,000 on consultancy fees compared to 430,000 budget. So there's some other wins that we'd had as well. So,
I think,
Councillor Courtney, would you like to move that we receive the annual report?
yes, I'd like to. Yes, that'd be good. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Stallard. Any further discussion on that? If not, I'll put the resolution. All those in favour will say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. And to the contrary will say no. The resolution is carried. Thank you. We'll now move on to business carryover review. Alan?
Yes, page 54.
54, 55.
What's this 54 on
Sorry.
mine?
On the run sheet, yeah, that's all.
Yeah, carryover report. Yeah.
That's right.
Yep.
So me again. Oh, what a surprise. Through the chair, this is the carryover report, basically taking our unspent capital budgets and asking for permission to move them into this current financial year. We had a successful year. We put in place a number of capital works, but we chose, and I think it's important to say we chose, rather than we were required, to slow down some works. So we chose to slow down the transfer facility work because we had to repair the slips before we did it. And we chose to slow down the Eves Valley gas reuse work because we wanted to ensure that the gas quality was correct before we progressed with that. So what that meant is that we delayed some of those activities, and the finances for the spending was not done last year, but it will be done in this current year. So we're asking permission to carry over $3.386 million from 2024-25 into 25-26 to essentially to allow us to do those projects that we were intending to do last year, but slowed down, and to make sure that we did them properly rather than quickly. And yeah, more than happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. I'm assuming, Andrew, that we can do this. There's no issue with that. It just rolls over into the next financial year.
Correct.
Thank you. Seems relatively straightforward. Councillor Walker.
Yeah, thank you, through chair. Just for peace of mind for anybody else listening to this, let alone myself. So the work that we chose to slow down, I totally understand that. So that's the carryover. Are we in a position where we will carry that out now in a timely fashion in this financial year?
Yeah, through the chair, this report is something that we need to do each year. Some years we have a larger amount of work that we'd carry over, which this year is a relatively, it's not a huge amount, but it's a more sizable amount than we are generally happy with. We would rather not be fixated on a date, but rather on a efficient outcome for the community. And as a result, my perspective is that we would do the right job in a timely fashion rather than do the job fast and potentially get something wrong or spend something less efficiently. So getting our ducks in a row is important. And in this case, we're just basically asking for the forbearance of the joint committee to allow us to take the money from last year into this year to carry on those projects and get them done. Yeah. So we definitely will spend time and energy getting them done this year.
Thank you. Anything further?
I guess I was just to clarify, it wasn't about doing a cheaper, less qualified job. It was more, are the ducks going to be lined up so that the spends will happen?
So the transfer facility is due to be built this year. We've got the design underway. This current construction season, we're expecting to be built. The engine is turning up for the Eves Valley gas system. So, it's an example of we are halfway through most of these projects. We're already in them. We're not stopping them. If we didn't carry this money over, we wouldn't be able to continue them, essentially. So we need to do it.
Thank you. Question from myself, Nathan, just in relation to the consents that Councillor Courtney alluded to earlier in the meeting, how much of the carryover will be used for accelerating them, for the want of a better word?
Well, rather than accelerating, for continuing them. So I think that the principal location that the consenting is in the Class 3 facility stuff at Eves Valley. So that's we've already underway. There's probably a small amount of carryover in the York Valley consent activities. We've done a bunch of drilling for piezometers and the likes. There's drilling rigs on site at the moment doing work there. and there's tenders going out for consultants at the present time for geotechnical and hydrogeology and all these other specialist expertise to ensure that the technical reports required for getting the assessment of effects are done in a timely fashion, so we can apply for the extension of the York Valley consent. We're aiming currently to do that in December 2026. So we're in the process of trying to get those reports started and all those scientific evidence generated.
Thank you. Any Councillor Courtney, then Councillor Stallard.
Thank you, Chair Brian. In your report, you just verbally said a moment ago that you mentioned the gas quality. Where are we with that? Are we progressing with that satisfactorily to be?
So this Councillor Stallard asked a similar question before. The gas quality, we are comfortable that we now have, and the gas quality we were talking about was at Eves Valley, the cracks in the cover, or we think of the cracks in the capping of the landfill was the principal cause. And we've now managed to change some of the mechanics and the electrical system so it can slow down the blowers when we need to. And we can also irrigate the capping of the landfill to keep it sealed. So rather than letting it crack and when it gets too dry. So yes, we're reasonably comfortable that we've got that under control.
I was really coming from the point of view that we're selling it on and to the hospital. And
so from the hospital.
Nothing to do with, you see, and the quality, because earlier on, my memory serves me correctly, there was some doubts when we were negotiating with them about the quality of the gas.
No, the York Valley landfill's gases remains and generally around about between 56 and 58% methane. So we manage the balanced gas. We adjust the field we've reduced it from weekly basis to a 2-weekly basis. We've changed a lot of stuff to make the system more resilient and more robust. There's always it's a biological system. The waste is breaking down, and if the different waste goes into the landfill, which has different characteristics, we would get different gas coming out. So we have to be careful that we are monitoring and making sure that's not too much sulfide, as an example, coming out. Generally, we don't see that as a problem at the landfill. So I don't think there's a lot of issues for our current uses. If we use it for other purposes, then we'll have to then do more to it. So it will currently have some sulfides. It will currently have some siloxane, so silica in the gas. It will currently have some volatile organic carbon. None of those things are a problem to the hospital, but they would be a problem to a cogeneration engine, or they would be a problem to other uses. And so part of what we do for the future uses of gas, we'll need to consider all of those other contaminants that would be potentially harmful for other uses. And that forms part of all that future work that we're working on.
Good. Thank you.
Councillor Stallard.
Thanks, Chair Brian. The item around buffer land acquisition, and I can see it says it's become complex. There's need for legal advice, so there might be some information you can't share at this stage, which is fine. But I wonder if you could just give some background information and what are the main objectives of considering acquiring buffer land?
So part of our current landfill operations are close to a neighbouring boundary, and we are seeking to get land beside us to make sure that we are not, in a position where we could be construed as creating an adverse effect over the boundary. So when you've got a boundary very close, that can occur more easily than if it's far away. And as we go up and the landfill gets higher, then the risk of litter or odour or dust, carrying in the wind as if it gets higher. So we need to be cognizant of that and try to make sure that we've got sufficient buffer land. And that's basically what we're trying to do in this case. So there is the intent was to have a workshop with the Joint Committee. We've been unable to do that at the present time to go through that, and it will have to be something we actually do before we can carry on forward.
Okay, and are there industry standards or guidelines for buffer areas around landfills?
Yeah, well, if you were to do a brand new landfill and do it without any other constraints, you might choose to. I think the South Australian guideline is for 500 metres of buffer zone. So that's a fairly fairly significant area. And most of the landfill, the York Valley, we do have that. We have on the east, the north, and probably not as much of that on the west, but on the south we don't. We don't have a sufficient buffer zone on the south. So the idea was to get more buffer zone on the south of the site to protect neighbours from us and us from neighbours, essentially. So, yeah.
Thanks. And the next item on consenting, it stated that requests for proposals have been issued to market. What is the scope of those? What kind of work have we looked to see done?
Yeah, so there's a bunch of different scopes going out. So geotechnical investigations, like drill holes to check make sure that the areas in the landfill that are going to then be filled in the future, and the subject of the future consent, are sufficiently dense and low permeability that there's not going to be an issue with with leachate migration through the soil. Hydrogeology, doing a hydrogeological map and showing how the water flows within the ground, so that we can then essentially map what we think the consequences of water flows and or leachate would be and where it goes to. That would then link into how we monitor those, those subterranean water flows, etc., to measure stuff. Then there'll be some sort of community consultation work, going on. There'll be other traffic studies. There'll be litter and odour and all of those other things that we've got to demonstrate that we're not going to create more than minor adverse effects. So
it's the information we need to put in. Okay, thanks. Finally, the firefighting truck.
Yep.
There's a fire. Who operates the vehicle? I guess you're saying pick me. And also, is that sort of mobilised when there are battery fires, or does it need to be a bigger event?
No, so the intent of the firefighting truck is it sits near the landfill overnight. It also is used for dust suppression and the likes during the day, but it sits at the landfill surface overnight. In the event that there was a fire, it's got a water cannon on it. It's 10,000 litres of water on it, and when the alarms go off from the thermal imaging cameras, you determine there's a fire. The first person there will hopefully get in that and just start suppressing the fire by essentially aiming the cannon at it and trying to slow that flame down while others can get there. We've also got 120,000 litres of water storage on site for the fire service to hook up to start fighting that fire. And the general way of fighting a fire at the landfill is actually to dig the fire out while you're suppressing it with water. So we wouldn't expect anybody to actually get in there and try and fight it. We'd be standing off and trying to suppress that fire just by stopping it from spreading until such time as the appropriate, excavator drivers are there and their appropriate machinery to then try and then get access to that fire and to put it out.
So the battery fires that we discussed earlier, that fire truck would be activated in that case, or is that too minor?
Only on one occasion that's been done in that case. Generally, they're too small, and they literally scoop them out with the digger and place them over there, and then cover them with clay, and then once that's done, then they can
suffocate it, and that's
suffocate it. Yeah, but we've had one that was sufficiently large that they did do that. Yes. Yeah.
Thank you. Anything further? Would someone like to move that we receive the carryover report? Move Councillor Stallard. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Walker. Any further discussion on that item? If not, I'll put the resolution. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, the resolution is carried. I think we'll just pause for a 5-minute break for those that want a toilet stop or have a cup of tea before we move to the contaminated soils report. So 5-minute break. attention, we'll come back to the agenda, and we're now on to item 6.4, Nelson Tasman Regional Landfill Business Unit Class 3 Contaminated Fuels Graduated Fee Update Report. Nathan, and your name again.
Yeah, that was quite a mouthful, wasn't it?
It was.
So this report is the next iteration of a previous one we've heard previously in March 25. We proposed a graduated fee. The Joint Committee asked me to go out and investigate some what others pay around the community or around New Zealand for that service, and to consider whether it was an appropriate fee. So we've been out and looked at the costs across New Zealand, and that has identified. I think we identified 16 facilities, and of those, the ones that are Class 3 facilities that are essentially for that purpose, then they're somewhere in that $100 a tonne range. Where they are a Class 1 facility who need capping and accept Class 3 or Class 4 material for capping, then that's much cheaper because they're essentially trying to get capping at a lower cost. So they're basically taking it at a lower fee. And where they're a Class 1 facility that doesn't want capping or other things, it's generally much more expensive. So because they don't actually want that in soil. So principally in Wellington, the numbers were very high for Class 3 and 4, $250 a tonne. And other places in Otago, where they were looking, and Southland, where they were looking for capping material, essentially was much cheaper. But on average, around $100 a tonne, I thought was an appropriate, was a fair representation of that. What we did do is also look at our fee structure and recognising that the comments that the Joint Committee members had made in regard to the benefit that a graduated fee gave to large subdividers compared to infill developers and small subdividers or small property owners. And we recognised that there was probably too much in favour of large developers at that time, so that the bulk of those smaller unit people would pay a much bigger fee than the large developers. So we reviewed the fee structure. We've now got three options on the table. One is the current flat fee, which is $163 a tonne. Here it's actually $164, so I've made a typo there. My apologies. We estimate the tonnage around about 2,000 tonnes a year of that. That's what we achieved, or we got last year. That was our budgeted estimate, and we sort of hit that within 100 tonnes. The second one is a lower flat fee, so $95 a tonne, so bringing it down about half, just under half, or over half the price. And we expect in the first year that we might get somewhere between 10 and 30,000 tonnes of material. We know that there are a lot of stockpiles of material within the region that we would like to be, disposed appropriately, and so that's our guess. And then the third option was a graduated fee, which was $130 a tonne for the first 250 tonnes, and then $90 a tonne after that. So it was a cheaper, it was to try and give some sort of scale of economy or economies of scale aspect. We sent out consultation letters to the community or to the users of the landfill. We didn't actually go to the community because the only people can use the facility are those that actually have a fob. And we, as of this morning, had received no responses. However, written responses. I, however, rang around yesterday evening and this morning a bunch of people to get feedback because I hadn't received any written responses. And all of those large contractors, because I could only really go to large contractors, were of the opinion that the $95 flat fee was the way they would prefer. It was much more administratively simple. And they were of the opinion that even with the 250 tonnes, a lot of the projects that even they do, the bigger contractors, would again, $130 a tonne for even a lot of projects. So they were keen on having a flat fee rather than a graduated fee. So that's what the feedback I've got in terms of, but it's all verbal. There is no written feedback at this time.
But bearing in mind, it is a reduction, isn't it?
It is a reduction, significant
So
reduction.
people probably thought, well, that's fine.
Yeah, and I did say that I was recommending the flat fee, and that, you know, I'm open to suggestions. So maybe they just thought that was okay, so I didn't need to say anything. Maybe my consultation letter was didn't quite get as much feedback as I'd hoped, but anyway, that's fine. So I'm still recommending a flat fee at $95 a tonne. If we get a $10,000 a tonne, that'll be an increase in revenue. If we get $30,000 a tonne, 30,000 tonnes, then obviously there'd be a significant additional revenue, and it'll help to compensate for what we suspect might be a deficit at York Valley. So, anyway, so any questions?
Councillor Stallard.
Thanks, Chair Brian, and thanks, Nathan, for going away and looking at this issue again. Much appreciated, and happy to go with your recommendation. But just to clarify, what is the total volume of Class 3 that's available currently at Eves?
So currently, based on the new assessment at we've got 120,000 cubic metres on stage 2. We would expect to be able to use half of that, let's say, so 60,000 cubic metres, and with a density of about 1.5 tonnes per cubic metre, that's about 90,000 or 100,000 tonnes of waste that could be accepted. So if we get 30,000 tonnes a year, then it's 3 years worth of capacity or somewhere in that order. So that gives us sufficient time to develop additional capacity between stages 1 and 2, and on stage 1, and then also the area below stage 1 and 2. So I'm reasonably comfortable this is a rational approach.
Okay, and then it's stated that after available Class 3 volume is exceeded, disposal fee increases to $164 per tonne. Where does that material go at $164 per tonne?
Basically, the intent of that statement is to allow us, in the event that something unexpected, let's say we got 100,000 tonnes in a short period of time, or 200,000 tonnes, which we've opened the gates up, we've made it cheap. Next month we get a lot of stuff that we're not expecting. We basically, once we get over that 60,000 cubic metres, we'd say, well, actually, we've used our capacity within stage 2 because we haven't developed that additional capacity. We can still accept that material, but the increased fee basically comes onto that, and it gives us enough money to move that back once we've got that space developed. So we would then recoup that space on stage 2 for our emergency capacity in the future.
Right, so it's a bit confusing having stages and classes, but stage 2 of the Class 3 landfill, we have 60,000 cubic metres, about 100,000 tonnes, and we're saying we'll use that at $95 per tonne, cubic metre? Per tonne. And if we go beyond that, then it goes up to the higher rate.
Correct. And then after we've developed more capacity, so on those other areas which we are trying to get consent for, once we've got those consents in place, we would then have 295,000 cubic metres of capacity. So we wouldn't have any constraints, and those conditions wouldn't be used.
And at that point, would that still be $95 a tonne? Or
correct?
Okay, thank you.
So the only time it goes higher in fee is if we were to exceed 60,000 cubic metres on stage 2. So because we'll have to shift it again. So we want the money available to shift it again.
Councillor Walker.
Thank you, through you, Chair, and thank you for the good report and your clarifications just now. Interested that you didn't get feedback, but appreciate that you reached out to some of our bigger entities. Did we actually reach out to any of our small property owners?
No, through the Chair, I didn't. I'm sorry. That was.
Actually, sorry, I
didn't. We sent letters to all customers of the landfill. So there was 200 odd letters went out.
So everybody got a letter, but you just rang a certain group because you had no feedback.
Correct.
So I appreciate that you made the phone calls. Obviously, this is going to be a recommendation from this business unit, and it goes back to both councils to be signed off.
Correct.
So really happy for that. I guess my only question is, in light of the recent weather events that we've had and will continue to have. Well, I live in the real world. Will this have a capacity problem for us? Because the lower we make it, potentially the bigger appetite we have for people to use the space. And then when the next event comes, God willing, not soon, you go, Richard, covered you. Yeah, implications down the track. Where would that leave us? What's the risk for us?
So the class 3 landfill is only for highly contaminated soil. And so I doubt we've received any highly contaminated soil as a result of the flooding activities. We generally receive highly contaminated material from subdivisions where there are, orchards or hail sites where there have been sheep dips or where there's been higher concentrations of other stuff. So, and we know of a number of industrial sites that have got contamination on them that would come. So there are class 4 and class 5 facilities which take lowly contaminated soils or clean material, and they are much cheaper than us. And so I would expect them to get that material first. Or in fact, in this case, we, as the regional sewage business unit, opened up the Best Island land for accepting the flood material, and we have not received very much at all. So
I guess I could, playing the devil's advocate, potentially there could be some stockpiles of quite contaminated soil sitting around because A, they didn't want to pay the price of what we've currently got, but B, the capacity to get it from where it's been stockpiled post our recent event. Just wondering, will this open? Be good to get it out of the environment and into a safe place. So I just wonder how much uptake this will create, dropping the price. I am in for dropping the price, so.
Yeah, I think this is beneficial for getting it out of the environment. It lowers the price, it halves the price essentially. Historically, I was worried that we would exceed the capacity because previously when we'd done our assessments on, very rudimentary assessments on stage 2, we only had 60,000 cubic metres of space, but we actually have more 120. And as a result, I'm not so worried anymore.
Thank you. Just to follow on from Councillor Walker, and probably more for Richard and Alec, just around getting it to the 2 councils so that we can implement from the 1st of October, is that achievable? It should be a relatively straightforward report, one would have thought.
Our Tasman district meets on the 11th of September and on the 25th. So there's 2 meetings.
And we meet on the 4th, so I'm hoping that this will make it to the 4th because that's our last council meeting.
Right. Thank you. Other than that, just to follow on from that, other than that, you're all good to go on the 1st of October if the councils approve it, Nathan.
Yeah, people have to apply to come. They essentially, it's by appointment, so they bring up the operator, at the York Valley, and they'll station somebody there. We have a weighbridge; it's all set up. We can do it. So yeah, no impediment for us accepting the material.
Excellent, thank you. Any further discussion? I'm happy to move the resolution. Do we have a seconder? Seconded Councillor Courtney. Any further discussion on the resolution, debate? If not, I'll put that. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Resolution is carried. Thank you. Now, what do we move to?
The business plan for 2026,
draft
27.
business plan on page 72. And once again, in your name, Nathan.
Through the chair, this is the draft business plan for circulation to the Nelson City Council and Tasman District Council for their consideration of feedback. It does result in a significant increase in fee. The local disposal levy has gone up for that year from 6 million to 7.8 million. The waste minimisation levy goes up by another $5. And because of the waste volume assessment, so we've obviously got 67,000 tonnes we've had this year. We don't know what the future is going to hold, but we've lowered our expectation to 70,000 tonnes. That increases our cost price as well. So overall, the projected gate fee, excluding GST, would be $311 a tonne in 26-27.
From what is it currently?
$266 in the 25-26 year. So,
So
in terms of the what's caused those changes, there's slight inflationary changes to operational costs, but it hasn't really changed anything very much. The bulk of the change relates to the local disposal levy increase, and to that's essentially $28 a tonne, and a $5 a tonne increase to the waste minimisation levy. And then there are some changes to some other things like trade waste fees for York Valley, where the price has gone from $7,000 a year to $160,000 a year. We, as a result of the actual use of the trade waste bylaw properly. So overall, a lot of that's the stuff that's changed has been stuff outside of the Landfill business unit's control. So we're not really able to mitigate it. We have budgeted for a deficit in that year of, I think, 300,000. I have to look at the budget, the report, which is the full extent of our accumulated surpluses. So we would be down, essentially not having any accumulated surpluses in the at that point. So we couldn't budget for additional deficits, and it might be difficult for us to achieve that if we would make a significant deficit this year, because we'd be running at we would have used up some of our accumulated surpluses. So we are in a position where the budget is tight, and we're not in a position to mitigate that increase to any measurable extent. So more than happy to take any questions.
thank you. Councillor Stowell or myself.
Thanks, Chair Brian. Thanks for the report, Nathan. Do we have the information on why the councils applied for a higher local disposal levy, extra 1.8 million or 900,000 each?
Through the chair, no. The process that where the two councils individually assess what their individual needs are for the local disposal levy, they apply to the joint committee. For that, the joint committee takes the lower of the two numbers. In this case, the Tasman District Council asked for 4 million. I think the Nelson City Council asked for 3.9, so the lower of the two is 3.9 million. So each council gets 3.9 million.
I'm familiar with the process, but I wonder, when do elected members see that kind of bid and the financial justification for it? Because it might be that the solid waste group, the expenses are simply gone up to provide the same services, or there might be additional services. That'd be just useful, I think, for elected members to see that information.
Sorry, I can't answer that on your behalf. The two council officers may be able to give you more information.
I'll let you go first, and then I'll see what it says.
Richard.
Well, our council will be very familiar with this extra request because we went through the last annual plan. The costs of recycling and waste minimisation have got to a point where this is what was required to actually cover the fiscal gap. Our council does not have a specific targeted rate for some of these aspects of solid waste. And I did raise with the council at the time that if this funding didn't come through from this local levy, that the council would have to consider what sort of rate was going to have to introduce to actually help fund the gap. So it won't be a surprise to our councillors. The question is going to be is whether the final outcome in terms of the landfill charges is going to be acceptable, and that may come back and cause us to have a review of the whole process. So, yep, that's the answer from Tasman.
So for Nelson, this is the cost of doing business and the requirements for dealing with this, for undertaking solid waste activities within the Nelson City Council. I do accept, so bearing in mind that this is a recommendation to the two councils, and we still need to give feedback back to the Nelson Tasman Regional Landfill Business Unit. And one of the issues that will be considered is the appetite in terms of the LDL and what that means for increased gate fees, and then the spin-off effect for the increase of fees at our recycling facilities. TDC and ETC operate slightly different in terms of fees and charges and across the board. But generally what happens with us is it's a bit of a circle, really. We asked for an LDL to give effect to our solid waste. Nathan then increases his fees at the gate, and then as a consequence of that, we need to look at what we increase our fees at our recovery transfer stations. And then there's a whole lot of other effects, but certainly we have the opportunity to share that with our councils. But in terms of, there's nothing really new in terms of our asset management plan. But we're also looking to give effect to the joint waste minimisation plan, which has just recently been approved by the two councils. So, we have to give effect to that, and the 3.9 that we requested is the cost of doing our solid waste activities.
So I wonder, just from an NCC perspective, will elected members, is that information available to them, the breakdown of the local disposal?
Absolutely, it is through the chair. Yeah.
So could that just be circulated at some stage? Thank
Can
you.
do that. Yes, absolutely.
That'd be really good. I mean, I'm just interested to know if it's same services, increased costs, or additional services and so on. So that'd be great. In terms of running the deficit of 300,000, that's about $4 a tonne or something like that. Yeah, it's neither here nor there. So if you decided to keep the reserve, I guess are you saying it's more problematic to increase the gate fee to not run a deficit? Where do we stand there?
No, I mean, I've tried to run the lease, to smooth the cost of landfill increases as best I can. As a business unit, we're not a profit centre. We're meant to cover our own costs. In the past, we have made some surpluses, and our position has been that we would budget for the removal of those surpluses over the residual life of the landfill. So we soften any changes. In the 2034 AMP, we then actually said, well, there's a big lump in our spending related to the gas system works that we're doing, and we wanted to try and soften that lump in our gate fee. So we chose to look at running some larger deficits to try and offset that. That didn't anticipate some of these other activities that have gone on. And as a result, we're in a position that we're running, this year we've budgeted for a $500,000 deficit as an example. So we will, that's what this year's budget is intended to run. So we were expecting to be using up some of our accumulated surpluses, and that's, at the moment, that's all we've got left. So that was what I was looking at doing.
Thanks. And just a couple more questions if I could. Item 6.4. 6.3. The primary capital expenditure in 26-27 is improvements for the beneficial reuse of landfill gas. What is that specifically?
Sorry,
6.3 on page 74.
Yeah, so I'd have to go to the business plan itself, and I'll try and find the table of activities in the back of the business plan.
I guess I'm just wondering.
In section 10 of the business plan on page 92, there's a capital works outline there. And so in 2026-27, the $12.5 million of expenditure relates to gas reuse installations. So that's the assumption that we're putting in a CNG plant at the landfill for.
And is that timing reasonable? Because it sounds like we've heard you say, everyone say this needs to be a focus for the incoming, council and the governance body.
I'm optimistic. I think that we have done a lot of work on a business plan already. Whether or not that meets the joint committee's approval in the next term, I don't know. I mean, we'll obviously go through that process. We'll have some workshops, etc. In order to start spending money on a renewable CNG plant, assuming that's what the answer is, in 2026-27, we need to have money there. Even if we started in June of 2027, it was still in that year of the 26-27, and we would have to carry some money over, given that we would be late. But I think we need to have money there to do it. We could choose to spread that over more years if we wanted to. I've just reflected the AMP numbers here essentially, and
that's all fine. Thank you. And a related point, one of the targets in their performance indicators and so on is that in 26-27, more than 80% of available methane gas is reused beneficially. Will we make that just through the hospital's use, or does that have to be something else?
No, that requires something else. The hospital would be more like 40 to 50% of beneficial reuse. So it needs another device to do that. So it may be that we don't meet it in that year, but we meet it in the following year once that additional device is installed and running. So that at the present time, our timing that from the 26, 27 and year, or the installation, was to be in that 26, 27 year. I mean, if we shifted out to 27, 28, then we wouldn't be meeting that. If we get it going, we would expect us to meet it.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, so the AMP has that money at that point, but again, I'm open to the council's feedback if they choose to push, to suggest we shift it out. I know that the Nelson Mayor is pushing to get stuff happening as fast as possible. Ultimately it's up to the councils and the joint committee to make the decision.
Nathan, I'm thinking that our council may push back a little bit on that gate price. Have you got any thing in there that you could take out to reduce? Have you got any flexibility around that?
Not a lot, really, no. I mean, I've already pushed, and the reason I've run $300,000 in deficit is because that's all I had available, and I've used the whole lot. We've also trimmed a lot of places. One of the things we've done in order to get this price to 311 rather than 300 and something is to recognise the additional life of the landfill. So we're going for the resource consent application for the extension of the life of the landfill at York Valley. And by recognising that additional life, we don't think there's a risk. There's a high risk of us not getting consent. I mean, the conditions of the consent might not be the ones we like, but we're expecting to get the consent. Therefore, we can accept that under the accounting rules. That then helps to depreciate, to reduce that price increase. But it's one of the things that we've done to try to keep the price down. So there's not a lot of other levers we have to pull. I mean, yeah, we actually was quite a bit of rejigging in the background to try and get the number to 311.
Thank you. Any further questions, comments? Councillor Courtney.
Well, I feel a little bit uncomfortable about this, Nathan. Just the timing of it, I think it's off. And I'll tell you for why. We've only just now passed, in the previous item, half price for class 3 waste, going down to $90. And my instincts tell me the timing is off.
Okay.
So I'd like to think about this before it goes to the councils, because the people I represent will say, what's wrong with them? What's wrong with that lot? Quite frankly, are they running a business unit, or what are they doing?
So,
no, hang on, I haven't finished yet. So we're cutting it to half price, you see. And I know that you could say, oh, there's only 2,000 something or other tonnes go through, but it's the look of it. It's the look of it, and I don't like it. And I'd like to think long and hard about it before you move on it.
Through the chair, if we leave the price of Eves Valley at $164 a tonne, we'll probably get about 2,000 tonnes a year, and so we'll get about $360,000, $370,000 of revenue. If we lower it to $95 a tonne, we'll probably get 10,000 tonnes of material in. That'll give us $950,000 of revenue. If we get 30,000 tonnes in, which is a possibility, we'll get nearly $2 million of revenue. That actually, my business plan assumes that I get 10,000 tonnes at $95 a tonne. It actually reduces the price of York Valley's fee slightly. If I put it back to $164 a tonne at 2,000 tonnes, York Valley's going to go up, not down. So I'm happy to do it, but it's not going to result in the outcome you think it's going to result in. It's going to result in an increase in the price of York Valley's fee.
Waste at York Valley is going down now anyway. You're not meeting your budgets.
Yeah, but I mean the cost of York Valley. If I increase the fee at Eves Valley, and I leave it at $164, the York Valley fee will be higher because I can't use any of the money from Eves Valley to offset the York Valley fee. That's the reality. So I'm strongly, the reason we've got that Eves Valley report on the agenda is because I believe I need it to support the fee reduction on York Valley. As a business, as an integrated business, those pieces help each other out. So I'm totally open to whatever you want me to do, but at the present time,
I was to think of the wider customer base you've got.
can I put this slightly differently? $28 a tonne increase is on the LDL. $5 a tonne comes from central government's ministry or levy. The bulk of the increases have resulted from things outside our control. We have not increased the cost of running the landfill. We've not increased the cost of running the landfill. The cost is going up for things that we can't control. So I can try and tighten the belt as far as I can, but it won't result in an outcome that increases or that decreases the price significantly. I've already done that to get the price to where it is. So if you'll note in the projected cost for 27, 28, is even higher again. So currently it's $338 a tonne projected for 27, 28, $350 for 27, 20. So it's going up further. It won't come down.
Councillor Starlight.
Long and hard about it, please.
Thanks, Chair Brian. And just following on from Councillor Courtney's point, because we do have to communicate something here in the first instance to the full councils and then to the public. So there's a $45 increase in the gate fee through to 26, 27 from 24, 25. 28 from LDL, 5 from WDL, that's 33, so it's 12 extra dollars. Have you broken that down for another other factors are reduced gate fee?
I did, but I haven't, but I may not have written it in the report.
Okay, it's just scattered amongst the depreciation, reduced gate fee from reduced volume.
Correct.
And other.
And there's a 2.5% assumption for the increase in our costs resulted to CPI, right? Waste management levy's gone up by $5, yeah. Yeah, so
that's $5 per tonne for the waste management levy.
Yep. So that's the central government one.
So there's 38 of the 45. Okay, thank you.
I guess we'll get some feedback from the councils for sure. And at that stage,
I fully expect that there'll be, this will be
pushback.
A lot of pushback. I will. Unfortunately, in this stage, I'll say, here's the causes. And the principal cause is the change to the local disposal levy. The second cause is the change to the central government's waste minimisation levy. And the third one is the change in the amount of waste we're receiving. Those three things, are the principal causes of the increase. There's obviously depreciation and other things going on. There's a small increase in the operating costs because of inflation. So I can't stop. It's part of our contract.
Thank you. Councillor Walker.
Yeah, thank you through Chair, and definitely hear what my colleague on my right is saying. It isn't very palatable, and I know that there's a certain sector in my community that's going to arc up big time. Lucky I've got thick skin. I guess what the important part is when the report comes to Tasman District Council, Nelson City Council, that there's enough body of language in there to understand these costs are being driven at us from central government. There is squat that we can do other than push back, lobby against, and be a voice in that space. But for us, when we sit at the table, we need to know exactly where these extra increases are coming from so we can front those conversations with our community. And the other thing is, if you get a complete pushback from either council or / both of them, where does this leave this business unit, and on what time do we have to come to a resolution to get this moving forward for you, Nathan?
Yeah, through the chair, I don't know exactly the answer. I mean, if we get pushback, we can go and assess what we can do to minimise the price. I mean, in areas, we will then resubmit a report to the joint committee to consider for further. That could go back around a loop a few times. At the end of the day, the joint committee, my understanding is that the joint committee sends this to the councils, and then the councils give feedback. The joint committee chooses to consider or not that feedback, to accommodate that or not, and then makes a decision. That's my understanding of the way the process is intended to work. I may be wrong about that, but that's the way it's worked in the past.
Thank you, Alec.
Oh, so look, through the chair, that's exactly how this happens. So this has been happening for as long as I've been here, and Rich has been in the job and before that. They ask for the LDL, we give them the LDL, they do their work, Nathan presents this, then goes to our two councils, and then we debate. I think the challenge is, and I think we just need to accept this, that we're both having our last council meetings on the 4th and the 11th, I think, of September. And it doesn't, there still is some time for the new council to come in and for us to be able to debate this. But we are at the end of one triennium going into another triennium. The requirements of the terms of reference require Nathan, and he's achieved his deadline. He submitted it to the councils as the both councils. Now we need to figure out how we debate that and give meaningful comments back to Nathan. But certainly I do expect, without a doubt, that and clearly it's reflected here from what I'm hearing, that there will be an unhappiness in terms of that gate fee, and it is for us as officers to show our council what that's made up. But to be fair to Nathan, he's only the recipient of central government and the LDL, and he has to make do, and he has to run the contract. So by and large, I genuinely don't think that he's got any fat in the budget, because we've pushed him hard. I can assure you, both Richard and I have written back to him on several occasions, telling him to sharpen his pencil. But we just need to be able to tell the story. And the challenge is, we're at the end of a triennium, going into a new triennium, but we have space. We're achieving a deadline here, and there will be further discussions as we go through.
Yeah, through the chair, this is the draft report going to the councils for their feedback. I expect to get feedback. We do have time to listen and to try to identify ways of mitigating it. And we'd love to have some suggestions about that with the feedback. And we'll go from there. So,
Thank you, Nathan. Richard, I don't think it's necessarily on that point. You had a point.
Oh, yeah, I think the point for us is it's not a problem for the business unit, it's a problem for both councils. And the LDL that we both asked for, there's reasons for that. Mm-hmm. And that's where the councils have to look, is that the LDL, is that the appropriate forum to collect funding to do the waste minimisation? And I think that's the question that both councils have to ask. I think what Nathan has outlined, and we have to convey this to our councillors, is although we've had a trade-off on the Class 3 going to East Valley, he's already indicated that there's an increased revenue result of that class, if that's going to help write off that. Now, if we go back and say, listen, we're going to leave it at 160, well, he's already outlined that the gate value is going to go higher. So we've got to convey back to our councils that there's been a trade-off made by the business unit already. But if we want the gate prices to go down even lower, then both councils have to look at how they're funding and stepping away and lowering their requests for the local development levy.
Thank you. Any further comments, or if not, I will move from the chair the resolutions that are currently on the screen or in front of you on page 172. Sorry. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Stallard. Any discussion, debate around that? If not, I'll put the resolution. All those in favour will say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Now, Nathan, does that bring us to the end?
that brings us to the end. Yeah.
Okay. So I'd just like to thank you all, officers and elected members, for your attendance and enthusiasm.
Mr. Chair, can I just take a moment and, on behalf of everybody around this table, express our thanks to you for the work you've done in chairing this committee, the number of years that you have, and for the manner, in fact, the very pleasant manner with which you've done this. You're unruffled. cool, calm and collected.
Really?
Look, it's my story and I'm telling it. It is. He told me to say this and I'm sticking to the script.
I told you to destroy that piece of paper.
Did you swallow it?
No, there's a calmness about you, Stuart. There really is.
Thank you.
And professionalism as well. And so I just want to say all the very best for the future, whatever that may be. Yes, I could say, who in this room gave him permission to retire anyway? I didn't. You didn't ask me. You didn't ask anyone here. You just made the thing on the run.
Yeah, you're
And I
right.
just wonder about
Stewie's
that.
married.
Right?
Stewie's married.
That comes into it, does it?
You must obey.
Yeah. So all the very best and thank you for the job you've done
Thank you.
professionally.
And thank you all for the way that you've attended these meetings. I think we've had pretty near 100% attendance from elected members, and the way that you've participated, I really appreciate that. It's been really good. And yeah, best of luck for those, all three of you are restanding. So best of luck for the upcoming elections, and hopefully whether this, I know that your experience will be valued, whether it's in this form or some other form, for maybe for some future landfill administering body, whatever that may be.
And just on behalf of officers, I just need to say it has been a pleasure.
Thank you.
We will miss you, and it has been a pleasure. Thank you for everything.
And to the committee as a whole, it's the last of the triennium. Maybe not all of you will be back on the committee. It's been fantastic working. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and the same.
Likewise, I
Thank you
concur.
to officers and everyone involved. So well done.
All right.
Right. Do we do a closing chair?
We do through the chair, yes.
We should both. It doesn't
We
actually
should.
say that on the run sheet.
We should. Those of you.
Oh, it is too. We've.
Tuia ki runga, tuia ki raro, tuia ki roto, tuia ki wahu, tuia te here tangata, ko ronga te pau, ko ronga te ao, humi e, hui e, tae ki e.
Well done. Thank you. And thank you all for